What's up, everybody, and welcome to the Wednesday edition of Pelicans Daily, brought to you by Fan Arch. I'm your host, David Grubb, editor-in-chief of thebirdwrites.com. Let's start with a quick look back at Tuesday night's improbable 127-120 win over the Los Angeles Clippers. Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I thought that the Pelicans were going to win that game last night, because I didn't, though maybe I should have. For whatever reason, the New Orleans Pelicans have dominated the Los Angeles Clippers over the past few seasons. Last night marked the eighth win for the Pels in their last 10 games against LA. The Pelicans got a total team effort in that victory. 7 players were able to reach double figures in scoring, and the Pelicans shot the ball incredibly well. They were above 55% from the floor overall, and then at nearly 55% from beyond the three-point line. But before we get into the weeds on this one, I'm going to stop burying the lead. The headlines should read all about Zion Williamson. Zion was dominant once again. Against the Clippers, he put up his second career triple-double, his second of the season, with 22 points on just 13 shots, with 10 rebounds and a career-high 12 assists to go along with those. He also made all 6 of his free throws. He did all of that in just 33 minutes. The Pelicans blew multiple double digits leads in this ball game. They led by as many as 21 points at one time, but every time the Clippers were able to fight their way back into the ball game, Zion responded and led his team to victory. He made some clutch plays down the stretch. He didn't back down from Kawhi Leonard, who took on the challenge of defending Zion. He didn't back down when he didn't get calls on drives to the basket, and he got fouled plenty of times. Again, free throws have been a big problem throughout Zion's career, but in the last 2 games in particular, 8 free throw attempts for Zion combined, only 6 against the Clippers. He's getting fouled, but he kept playing. He didn't let that distract him from the game. There are performances when you absolutely understand why the Pelicans have stuck with Zion through everything. Because basically, against the Clippers, he was on some incredible Hulk ish. He got hungrier, he got angrier, he got stronger as the game went on. And I've said it and I'll say it again. The New Orleans Pelicans without Zion Williamson are simply a franchise in search of a Zion Williamson. The number of players in the NBA who can impact the game the way he can is very, very small. Chris Paul was the ultimate floor raiser for this franchise. Anthony Davis, of course, was an all NBA performer who did it on both ends of the floor and earned one of the 2 playoff series victories for this franchise. If you put them together, somewhere in the middle, you get Zion Williamson. He is a hybrid of all the very best things of those guys. He can create for his teammates like a point guard. He can score in bunches. The entire opposing defense has to focus and account for him no matter where he is on the floor. And now, at this stage in his career, he's becoming more than just a willing defender. He's becoming an impactful one when he's on the court. You could argue that right now, Zion Williamson is the best defensive player on the New Orleans Pelicans. With Herb Jones gone, with DeJounte Murray not playing, even when he was on the court, not playing up to the level that the Pelicans expected him, a former All NBA, All Defensive Team player, Zion Williamson has grown into maybe the best defensive player on the New Orleans Pelicans. He still has his faults, and considering the amount of games played in his career, he still has, concerns about injury and room for growth. But for the time being, there's just no way the Pelicans could even consider moving on from Zion this offseason. Not when he still provides the very best chance that this team has for being competitive in a real way. Before we move on to the next topic, you do have to hand out flowers to everyone who took the floor in that win. CJ McCollum and Trey Murphy were both excellent. They both scored more than 20 points, finishing the night with 44 combined points and making 8 of their 16 three-point attempts. CJ has been a Clipper killer in both games so far this season, averaging 28 points with 13 three-pointers against the Clippers. Bruce Brown had his best game as a Pelican with 12 points, 10 of those coming in the first quarter on 4 of 4 shooting. He shot better than 50% from the floor for just the second time since coming over in that trade with the Toronto Raptors. Karlo Makovic, he scored 15 points off the bench on 6 of 7 shooting, and he made his only three-pointer of the night. He scored in double figures in 3 straight games. And Jose Alvarado added 14 more on 5 of 6 shooting with 4 three-pointers. We spent a lot of time talking about Jose's value on Tuesday's show, so check that out if you missed it. Jordan Hawkins, he had his second consecutive game above 50% from the floor. That was the first time this season he's been able to do that. And his third straight game scoring in double figures, finishing with 11 points. The Pelicans also got solid contributions from their center position. Yves Misi had 9 points, 8 rebounds, and 2 blocks. Though, look, Eve's hands, that is going to continue to be a concern. He's just got to be able to catch the ball in traffic. And Mo Bamba had 7 boards and 1 block in his debut, played about 15 minutes for the Pelicans. Again, it was a team effort with a singular performance by Zion Williamson. You don't want to take too much from one game, especially at this stage of the season. But if you're betting on the future, it's moments like this that make you believe. Up next for the Pelicans, the Orlando Magic on Thursday. That'll also be at the Smoothie King Center. The Pelicans picked up their 18th win of the season on Tuesday. They are now 1 win away from avoiding the worst record in franchise history, and that was during Byron Scott's first season in New Orleans more than 20 years ago. Willie Green is wrapping up season number 4 with the Pelicans this year. Stay with me. In politics, the question has been, are you better off than you were 4 years ago? And I'm asking you, are the Pelicans better off than they were when they hired Willie Green? The data clearly says no. The Pelicans, by any measurement, in year 4 are farther away as a team from winning a playoff series, let alone a championship in the NBA, than they were in 2021-22. Willie is the 4th coach in franchise history to coach at least 4 seasons in New Orleans. He has the worst season 4 record of the 4. Alvin Gentry, he was 33-49 in year 4. He got one more year with Zion Williamson's rookie year, and then he was dismissed. Monty Williams was 34-48. He got one more year. He made the playoffs, exited in the first round in a sweep to the Golden State Warriors, and he was dismissed. Byron Scott was 56-26, taking the Pelicans to the second round of the NBA playoffs, where they lost in 7 games to the eventual champion San Antonio Spurs. Willie Green's job status has been in question almost since he got this job. And such is the burden for being a first-time head coach and the burden of having Zion Williamson, the number 1 overall pick in 2019. Willie was brought in following one of the most difficult seasons in franchise history, following COVID and a mini player revolt against Stan Van Gundy. According to reports, you go back and you can check this on your own, but, there were guys like Josh Hart and Brandon Ingram in particular who did not get along with Stan Van Gundy. There were also reports that there were people within the building that Stan had conflict with. It was a very trying time. Stan had his good qualities. Certainly, there was some development by the Pelicans in the second half of that season, but it wasn't a great season. The Pelicans moved on. Enter Willie Green. You could argue that Willie Green's best season was his first season when they went 36-46 and made the playoffs by, we all know the iconic moment of Willie telling his team that they had to fight in the play-in tournament. They ultimately get to the playoffs, losing 6 games to the Phoenix Suns. Everything felt like the Pelicans were moving forward at that point, that they were on the verge. You had brought in C.J. McCollum. Brandon Ingram looked like he was ascending still at that point, on his way to being a consistent all-star level performer. And you had that season, you missed Zion Williamson completely, but you felt just adding him the next year, the team would be far better. Well, they missed the playoffs in year 2, 42-40. Yes, Zion was injured, but there was something missing. They weren't the same. They got swept in the playoffs last year after winning 49 games. And again, that record feels like there was some smoke and mirrors attached, considering the Pelicans were 0-22 in games that they trailed entering the fourth quarter. They had a very poor home record, and, they just did not achieve where you expected a team that won 49 games to do. They were still hanging on in the fringes of the Western Conference playoffs. Willie's strength has always been his ability to communicate. But the problem is, in year 4 now, what is he communicating? What is the message that he's sending to his players? It's not enough to simply be a good guy. It's not enough to be respected. The Pelicans had a good guy before in Monty Williams, and Monty Williams was not good enough. Okay, Monty Williams was not good enough when he was the Pelicans head coach. Yes, he had some success in Phoenix, but again, I would probably, if you ask me, I would argue that Chris Paul did as much for Monty Williams as Monty Williams did for any of the teams that he coached. Monty Williams had 5 winning seasons in his career. 4 of those came with Chris Paul on his roster. You don't just have being a good person does not equal being a great coach. And I have one more question for you regarding Willie Green. Where does he give you an advantage over his opponents? Is it preparation? His tenure has been marked by long losing streaks, blowout losses, late game failures in execution, and playoff failures. You've won two playoff games in 3 years. Two playoff, and you won't be adding to that list this year. They've been good at times, but never really good enough. Yes, there was a flirtation with first place in the Western Conference early in the season, 3 years ago. That was in December. The season is won in the back half. A lot of people have been in first place in December. The Pelicans did not show that continued type of growth. The arc has flattened, so to speak. So David Griffin and Gail Benson have to make a decision just like the Saints did with Dennis Allen. Whether you like Willie or not, that's irrelevant. The Pelicans have Zion Williamson under contract for 3 more seasons. They have to be winners by the second season, or they'll have to trade Zion by the third. You don't want to go into Zion's third contract season with any kind of questions about whether or not he's going to stay long term. And if you haven't won next year or the year after, if you haven't shown significant progress in becoming competitive in the Western Conference, then you've got to move on from Zion Williamson after 9 years of not living up to his potential. If the roster is what it is, and most likely there won't be major changes outside of adding a very good rookie in this draft class, can Willie Green make that happen? If the answer is no, if you aren't certain that the answer is yes, then it is time to move on. There's another saying that if you were going to do it eventually, you might as well do it now. And if you don't believe that Willie Green is the long term solution to winning with this franchise, then it is best that the Pelicans go ahead and make a clean break at the end of this season. Whether or not Willie Green is the head coach next season, the New Orleans Pelicans have to have everyone in the organization on the same page in building an identity for this franchise. And quite honestly, that's something that they have not had over the last 6 seasons. All right. The greatest failure of the past 6 seasons is the failure to build an identity for the New Orleans Pelicans. As we just said, the Pelicans weren't a great defensive team. That's what we were sold, that they were going to be an elite defensive team. But David Griffin said it himself. I asked him the question, after the trade of Brandon Ingram. He said that this team looked good defensively, but could not defend against the elite teams in this league. Apparently, Herb Jones was the defense, because look how this team has fallen off without him. They have not been a great offensive team over the past 6 seasons. They've been behind the curve when it comes to playing with pace, shooting threes, and creating effective systems that can generate looks for players. And arguably the biggest sin by this organization is its original one. The New Orleans Pelicans did not commit to building around Zion Williamson from day one. During Zion's rookie year, before he ever played a game, the New Orleans Pelicans came out and publicly said that Drew Holiday was an MVP candidate. We all knew at the time that it wasn't true. It wasn't just something that the media knew. Fans knew it. Everybody around the league knew it. As good a player as Drew Holiday is, he is an elite role player. He's not an MVP candidate. He's not. So for David Griffin to say that publicly, it may have been to do a favor for Zion, to take the pressure off of him. But the pressure is going to be there for a number one pick no matter what, especially when you come into a losing situation. It is your job as the number one pick to make things better. Everyone is expecting that. It doesn't matter who you are. That's the burden of being the number one pick. Zion Williamson was that, a generational talent who couldn't get introduced last before his own home games. The organization essentially pitted Brandon Ingram against Zion Williamson to be the face of the franchise. It let them duel to see who was going to win it. And in turn, Zion retreated into the background. Injuries, of course, made that even easier for Zion. He flees off to Portland. He stays away from the team longer than you expect to deal with these injuries. Out of sight, out of mind. And maybe they thought they were protecting him. Maybe they thought they were doing him a favor. Maybe they thought that they needed to hedge their bets because Zion couldn't stay healthy, or because of the rumors that had gone around that we've all heard about Zion wanting not to be in New Orleans, especially before he signed that rookie extension. But time and time again, Whatever good intentions that the organization has had, they've led to bad results. Whether it was allowing Zion to warm up in the Smoothie King Center and throw down dunks before keeping him out of a play-in game, or it's for 6 years to discipline him for tardiness, the front office has been in its own way in getting this team better. And the Pelicans have to change their plan, whatever it is, right now. They cannot go into year 7 without a clear idea of how they want to play and who they need on this roster to play that way. The failure to sign the right center, a center who could protect the rim to help Zion Williamson. The failure to get a point guard going into each season, worrying about that position. The failure to have enough shooting around Zion Williamson, consistent shooting that you could count on, has been something that has been a recurring theme through 6 years in this organization. Why? Why? This is a job, not a family, no matter what anybody says. Usually, the places that tell you that your job is like a family, those are places where they just want to be able to take advantage of your goodwill when they do something wrong. That familiar talk has worn thin. Pelicans fans don't want to hear it anymore. They demand results. Hell, the Pelicans fans deserve results at this point. The organization has to find alignment like a chiropractor working on a spine. All right. Part of the organizational alignment is building through the draft. You reinforce your identity with the players you select. Rockets as the perfect example of that. Oklahoma City, another example of that, especially if you're building around Zion Williamson. If that's what you're deciding to do, you need players that complement how he wants to play. Who out there could be an instant contributor alongside Zion Williamson, Trey Murphy, and the rest of the Pelicans core? Well, let's start by looking ahead with the competitive part of the season effectively over. We need to start looking ahead to the NBA draft. Cooper Flag obviously is the consensus number one pick, but the odds are against the Pelicans getting them. Right now, the Pelicans still in fourth place in the draft lottery odds. Yes, they could move up. We've seen them move up. They moved up to get Zion Williamson. They moved up when they got Anthony Davis. They've had luck before, but let's say they don't move up and get Cooper Flag. So how about looking at Rutgers freshman point guard Dylan Harper? Harper will not be on the draft board long. He's a lock to be taken in the top 3. Most folks have him as the second best player in this draft. What can he do, and what does he bring to the table potentially for the New Orleans Pelicans? Well, Harper's versatility is one of his biggest assets. He can function as both a primary scorer and a complementary player, adapting his games to whatever the team needs. His basketball IQ is off the charts, allowing him to read defense, and he makes very good decisions with the ball in his hands. He's the son of an NBA player. That's very important. And Ron Harper, a 5-time NBA champion, 3 championships with the Chicago Bulls, 2 championships with the Los Angeles Lakers. When it comes to scoring, his son is a 3-level threat. He shoots 49% from the floor, about 35% from beyond the arc, and he's at 74% from the free throw line. He has an ability to create his own shot. He's very good at handling the basketball. He's got good footwork, and around the rim, he's efficient with either the left or the right hand. He's got good body control, and he's very strong at 6'6". In clutch situations, Harper's the kind of guy who's going to demand the final shot. He's trusted to take critical shots for that Rutgers team. He's very confident and composed in pressure situations. And again, with that size and versatility, he can guard multiple positions as a defensive player. And the Pelicans need that. They need a point of attack defender. Obviously, if you keep Willie Green, you're going to probably still be switching. He can guard 1 through 3 and maybe even some small ball 4s. However, there are areas of improvement for Dylan Harper. He needs to get better as a 3-point shooter. He needs to get more consistent, and he's got to be better against longer, more athletic defenders. He's also been prone to turnovers in bunches, but you can live with that if you're getting dynamic scoring. But he's got to stop forcing drives at times and kick out to open teammates. If you're playing with Zion Williamson, if you're playing with Trey Murphy, if you're playing with CJ McCollum, the ball has to move. He's got to make quick reads and quick decisions. But again, if you're talking about taking a rookie point guard, I believe that point guard is the most difficult position in the NBA to transition to from college to the NBA. There's a lot of learning, a lot of subtleties that go into playing the point guard position. So maybe the Pelicans also need to invest. If you're going to get Dylan Harper, you need to invest in a veteran point guard to teach him the ropes at the NBA level. The big question for Dylan Harper is, can he develop into a primary scoring option? With CJ McCollum entering the final year of his contract, it's highly likely that if the Pelicans don't get off to a great start or aren't making a run in the playoffs, that they would trade him mid-season and try to get some talent in return. So Dylan Harper then would be thrust into that role of being your third best scorer behind Zion and Trey Murphy. And without DeJounte Murray, who won't be expected to come back until late next season, you're going to need that third option every night. Is he best suited as a complementary player? If that's the case, how high is his ceiling? Will he improve his turnover rate? Can he be more efficient with a 3-point shot against better competition? All of those are the questions. But again, what rookie does not come in with some question marks? You're going to see how his body develops. You're going to see how his mind develops. You're going to see how his game develops. But overall, if you're talking about Dylan Harper, you're getting a well rounded big guard with the tools to be a very good contributor at the NBA level. People typically compare him to guys like Cade Cunningham or Jalen Brunson. He's going to be one of the top prospects in this draft. He could be an all-star player if he reaches his ceiling. Dylan Harper could be the kind of player you pair with Zion Williamson at this stage of the career and watch it extended. Because as much as you enjoy having the ball in Zion Williamson's hands, if he's playing 32 minutes a night going forward, which seems like it's working, but if 32 minutes a night is the limit that you put on Zion, if the Pelicans see for, let's say, the first half of the season to see if that continues to work, and maybe they expand it as you get later in the season and the games become more critical. But if you're going to need somebody who can handle the basketball for large chunks of time, we've talked again about Jose Alvarado and his inability to play extended minutes, more than 25 minutes a night. So you need that guy to be able to run your offense, create his own shot, and create for others. All right, folks, that's going to be a wrap on this episode of Pelicans Daily. Thank you so much once again for checking us out. If you enjoyed the show, don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe. Let me know what you think about everything we're talking about the New Orleans Pelicans. You can also follow me on social media at DM Grubb, that's DMGRUBB, and as well at thebirdrights.com for more of your Pelicans coverage. Till the next time, take care and let's go Pels.